Welcome back to 2020 on this Thursday. This is Andrew McLennan, your host today. Well, up next, we are going to ask the question why the church should stop looking to the government to stop domestic violence. And yes, domestic violence can even happen in Christian marriages and families too. But what responsibility do we have personally? Or what responsibility do our churches have as an alternative to expecting governments to provide blanket solutions? Christian ministries in the domestic violence space are working to address the growing needs across communities. Our special guest today is a 20-year veteran working in family and domestic violence. Matt Boulton leads the Circuit Breaker program. He's best known as the author of Changing Tools and the Circuit Breaker program. He specialises in domestic violence cases and working with perpetrators. He also produced a documentary for the Joint Church's Domestic Violence Prevention Project called Not in My Church, and it has been widely used as a training resource for clergy. And Matt Boulton, I'd like you to welcome you to the studios today here at Vision on 2020.
Thanks very much, Andrew. It's good to be back here again.
Well, it's always good to have good-looking people like you, Matt, because it gives all of us hope that there's still hope for us. But, Matt, we are talking about a very serious topic today. Domestic violence is a big issue in Australia, and it's a growing issue in Australia. Can you give us some stats and just how prevalent is domestic violence in Australia today?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. There's probably a lot of people thinking to themselves, it seems like we see a domestic homicide every week. It seems like every week we're seeing a story like this. And the fact is we are, and we have been for quite a long time. In Australia, we've been losing one woman per week as a result of domestic homicides or a murder by a current or former partner. And Queensland's actual domestic violence homicides have just gone up 50% last year, which is
really so the
alarming.
trend is up. It's not
up.
static. It's actually a growing problem.
No, it's been a problem that's been going up since COVID, since lockdowns. But before that, we already had a national epidemic. We already had 1 in 4 women from the age of 15 upwards that would experience abuse from a current or former partner. We had police being called to a domestic violence incident every 2 minutes.
Is that Queensland, is it?
That's national.
Oh, that's national.
National figure. Yeah. So we really have a problem. You know, if there was a woman losing her life every week from a toaster, that toaster would certainly be off the market, and we'd be asking some questions. So unfortunately, we know that the trends during COVID lockdowns increased. There was hard data on that. So Google searches for domestic violence help were going up 75%. There were 75% increases in frontline services being requested for help. And the figures that really don't lie were hospital admissions for in emergency rooms for domestic violence, and they were up 65%. And we don't really seem to have seen these figures coming downwards.
Yeah, so because obviously a counter-argument would be, forgetting the deaths and the serious assaults that are being hospitalised, a counter-argument would be years ago, people just put up with this. They didn't tell anyone. It wasn't reported. And now, thanks to government initiatives and I think thanks to more community awareness, I think people are obviously more inclined to report. But yeah, like you said, if those deaths are increasing and the hospitalisations are increasing, this is really sad. This is really tragic that this is a major problem, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. And I think that's the answer to that, Andrew, that a lot of people do think that it's just about us being a bit more open about the subject, and that's a great thing. But yeah, those stats don't lie, and the hospital admissions. So it's a sad situation that we're in, and it does appear to be getting worse.
Yeah, Matt, what is the government doing about this? And let's do federal and state. You are based in Queensland. Let's start with the federal government. What is the federal government of Australia trying to do about this?
Well, the federal government in 2022, the Labor government, Ministers Amanda Rishworth and Katie Gallagher announced what they called an ambitious national plan on family violence, and with the ambitious goal to end domestic violence within one generation. So you'd have to you certainly can't argue that that's ambitious.
When was that announced?
That was October of 2022.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago.
So I was excited about that. Not really, but I did look into it straight away, and I think from the first paragraph of that plan, I could see it was destined to failure. And once again, it's another policy doing the same old that's been failing, and the focus of that plan was very much on, in their own words, social, cultural, political, and economic factors contributing, which is not really where I believe the solution is.
Well, it's idealism, isn't it?
That's right.
I mean, it's like communism. Communism is a great idea. You know, let's just level the playing field. Let's all work hard each day, get paid the same amount. There's no rich, there's no poor. It all sounds good, but it doesn't work, does it? Because there's no actual practical steps to create that utopia that they think they're going to bring in. And statements like that, I will abolish it within one generation. It's very easy for a politician to say that because in one generation, they'll no longer be in office and they're no longer accountable for their statements. And then they'll say, oh, well, we tried.
That's it.
It's just idealism because, if you're going to say that, you got to tell us how we're going to achieve that. And so repeat those key words you said before. They said the key reasons are?
Well, they believe that by focusing on social, cultural, political and economic factors, that's really where the solution's going to come.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, Andrew, I think, and this is something that we saw during COVID lockdowns, is that sometimes I like to go down to the river, and if I go down at low tide, I'll see rocks that have been there the whole time, but they're only revealed at low tide. And I think that's what we saw with COVID lockdowns, that people were saying, COVID lockdowns are causing domestic violence. No, they don't cause domestic violence. Alcohol doesn't cause domestic violence. And none of these social factors cause domestic violence. The social pressures just reveal the problems that have been there all along. And, people like you and me, we're under the same pressures. And we're not using that as an excuse to abuse people. So, I think that there's a deeper problem that's not going to be legislated out of fashion. It's...
So just repeat those again. We had economic, we had social. What were the other factors they claimed were the key contributors?
Social, cultural, political and economic factors. And
political? I mean, hello. What's politics got to do with people committing domestic violence in their homes? It's got nothing to do with it.
We could talk about cause and effect with this, though, because if they're saying that these things are the cause of domestic abuse, I would say no, actually domestic violence is the cause of many of those issues. So, for instance, economically, even as far back as 2016, KPMG did an audit on the real cost of domestic violence to the Australian economy at $6 billion. That was back then.
Whoa, $6 billion.
$6 billion a year across all of the many areas of spending, and then the human cost of domestic violence, of course, is much greater than money. But homelessness, a lot of people would say, the homelessness problem, the housing problem, is causing domestic violence, whereas actually, right back in the early around about 2013, the Drug and Alcohol Council of Australia released their figures that they believed that 75% of homelessness was actually the result of domestic violence, either directly or indirectly. So
it's a consequence, homelessness. It's not a cause.
That's right, yeah. So we have to look in both directions, but
based upon that, Matt, the federal government, to me, doesn't have an answer. Would that be fair to say?
I think they don't have an answer, but it's worse than that. And the real danger, I think, here is that if we misdiagnose the sickness, we will prescribe the wrong remedy. And when we do that, people die. And that's what we're seeing every week. The other downside of that is that if we prescribe the wrong remedy, if we don't really understand the problem, then people don't get the right remedy, and that there might be other solutions out there that are not getting that funding or getting that attention.
And we are going to open up the talkback line shortly, and I want to put it out there to our listeners. You may have a comment, you might have a query, you might have a question to ask Matt. Matt has worked in this space for 20 years. He leads a program called the Circuit Breaker Program. He's the best... he's the author of the book Changing Tools. That's what he's best known for, and also for this Circuit Breaker Program. So we want to hear your thoughts on this topic. Domestic violence is a huge problem in Australia. You might have an experience you want to share or a question you want to ask Matt. And Matt, before we open up the talk lines, can I ask you, if it's possible really quickly, what do you think the key issue is here? What is the key driver behind this?
I think we can't legislate our way out of this problem. At the end of the day, there's only one group of people that can end domestic violence, and it's not government, it's not police, it's not corrections, it's not victims, it's the ones doing the abuse. And there are many of those people that are seeking change if we can engage with them. But what I tell people everywhere is we can never hope to end domestic violence unless we're engaging the ones doing the violence in some kind of a process of change. Anything else we're doing is just going to be moving the same problem around.
Yep. Okay. Good answer. So the cause and the problem and the driver behind this is the individuals involved in it and the individuals who are obviously perpetrating this domestic violence. So we have Matt Boulton with us today. He leads a circuit breaker program. He wrote a book called Changing Tools to address this growing problem in Australia called domestic and family violence. If you have a comment or a query or a question, please call us today on 1-800-316-316. That's 1-800-316-316. We'll be back shortly and taking your calls when we're back. Well, welcome back to 2020. We have Matt Boulton with us today. He is a 20-year veteran working in domestic and family violence. We're also taking your calls today on 1-800-316-316. We've already got a couple of callers waiting. But, Matt, before we go to our callers, I do want to ask you, why are you so invested in this space? Why have you given 20 years of your life to family and domestic violence?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. And certainly as a pastor, I saw a lot of situations where I realised that I could make a difference and get involved. And I really respected the brave people that would come out with a story and actually confess that they had an issue with domestic abuse. But it also just brought me back to my own past. And as a 20-year-old man, when I was married, I think I went into marriage very insecure and probably, in retrospect, a boy stuck inside a man's body, just trying to work it all out. And I was in a church, I was involved in volunteering, and I was, quite involved. But at home was a different story, and somebody that was edging towards becoming an abuser, using language that I didn't even agree with, but in moments of conflict it would come out. And I was on a worsening trajectory with that in my own marriage, and eventually one day crossed the line into getting physical. And it was something that I said I could never do. I actually said I could never become one of those scumbags. I would take my life if I ever did that. Then to become the thing that I hated, and in some ways to not understand how I got there was a mystery. So I actually went looking for help, where I think a lot of Christians go looking for help, the church. And at that time, churches were pretty badly trained in that area. And to be honest, some of them I think were more part of the problem than the solution at that time. And I eventually had to look elsewhere, and I did a program, I went to Lifeline and did a men's program there, a domestic violence program. That was a scary thing to walk into that room, wondering who I might see there and what they might think, and whether real domestic violence perpetrators would be there, because I didn't really identify as one. And I said that on my interview, and they said, "That's okay, mate. Just fill out this questionnaire, and we'll see what's going on." And as I filled it out, it was like a bingo card. It was, oh wow, like I have become one of these guys. How did I get here?
You were ticking the boxes.
That's right. But that was think about a 13-week program, and it just positioned me with people that were on the same journey as me, that were all wanting change, but we just needed new tools, and we just needed some tools and strategies to do life better and become better men. So
can I ask, when you were doing that program, where was your wife at? Like, how was she doing?
Yeah.
Was she still at home, or had she left you? Or
the wake-up call for me was that we separated, and that happened very suddenly. I came home to an empty house and a note saying that she'd left, and it wasn't safe for her. At the time, I kind of laughed it off. I thought, oh, it's just being dramatic. But no, that reality really sunk in, that no, I had become this thing that I hated, and I was dangerous to live with, and I needed to do some work. So thankfully getting those new tools and being able to have some new strategies for managing myself, managing my temper, and getting the things that are normal to want in relationships. It's normal to want respect. It's normal to want a bit of security. It's normal to want intimacy, but there are very dysfunctional ways that people can go about that, and I was in that camp. But I can honestly say in the about 28 years since that time, nearly 30 years since that time, I've never been tempted to go back to those old patterns because I've found something that I was looking for that whole time and just didn't know it.
Well, this is a great story because you've done a program and you've experienced genuine transformation in that program. So your behaviours have changed. You've never relapsed back to that. Have you? Did you and your wife reconnect, or have you remarried, or are you in a marriage, or were you in a marriage after that? Or?
The miracle story is we did get back together after 10 months. We did a lot of counselling. We did that really carefully, together and separately. Yeah, we reconnected, and we reconnected safely. We both really wanted that relationship to be based on trust, not just fingers crossed. And after what had gone before, I really felt that, she really deserved that. So that was why we did things really carefully the way we did. We even had some good friends that invited us to live under their house for a while with them so that they could keep an eye on us. So it's amazing.
That is an amazing story, and it just gives me so much hope that people can experience genuine transformation, and I can see why you're so passionate about this area now. But we have a couple of callers, and thank you, callers, for being so patient and waiting. But we've got Andrew in Victoria. Andrew, would you like to add a comment or ask a question today?
Yes, good morning, Matt and Rob. Thank you for this program. It's just highlighting an issue that has been a worry for me for some time. My daughter, I won't name her, but for a number of years has been in a relationship which she seems to suggest she can't leave, and yet it's full of violence and abuse and really bad sort of situations, and even to the point of dangerous activities. And I really don't sort of like it. As a parent, I feel helpless, even though she acknowledges all the things that should happen to cease this situation, can sort of alleviate her problems, but she seems to be somehow attracted to this person to the point where she seems not to be able to leave.
Hey, can I just, Andrew, ask you to stop there? I just want Matt to respond to that. We're going to go to news in a couple of minutes, but quickly, Matt, what are your initial thoughts on that?
Thanks for sharing your story, Andrew. And I think one of the things that you might have noticed is that it's a cycle, and it's normal that love is real in these relationships, and often a partner will truly love their partner and they will want to stay with them, but it cycles, and there's times where there's violence, but there's also times where their partner can be very charming and very seemingly very loving. And so I think that having some resources that explain that, there's a very good book called Opening the Door from the Inside. Actually, the head facilitator of the group that I did at Lifeline wrote that book, and it's the most compassionate and empowering book that I've seen.
Say the name of the book again.
The book is called Opening the Door from the Inside.
Opening the Door from the Inside. So
it's a really empowering book for people that think they might be in that kind of relationship. And it's not a shrill, crazy sort of book. It's not an extremist book. It's saying, hey, as a domestic violence counsellor of 40 years, as she was, sometimes there is a way through this to get your voice back, to get your power back in the relationship. But sometimes you do need to escape, and the book's real clear on how to do that. And we've got those on our website, actually, at circuitbreakercourse.net.
Do you want to add something more to the conversation today, Andrew?
I certainly agree with Matt's description of the relationship, whereby obviously there is a deep love there, but as you say, it's a cyclic type of arrangement whereby whenever either one of them becomes offended by something, the violence sort of strikes out, and it becomes extremely sort of abusive to both parties, and each one sort of trying to sort of get the best out of that situation, which will obviously end up in, sort of hitting and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you're saying there, Andrew, is important, because this is why government and legislation isn't going to make a change, because it's in that heat of the moment that decisions are made. And, as we've seen in some of the tragic news stories, people are not, the top of mind is not, I might go to jail or what is the law about what I'm about to do. People in that are activated in that moment are not thinking straight, and they are driven by the conflict that they're currently in, and they're driven by those bad habits. And so, but as we said, it's a cyclical thing, and what we need is a break in that cycle that helps people to escape from that and to have some sort of an off-ramp.
And Matt, obviously you've suggested that book, which sounds like a great book to read. Now, say the name of that book again in case people have just joined us.
Yeah, that book is called Opening the Door from the Inside.
Opening the Door from the Inside. So obviously reading that book is a great help, but also for Andrew more specifically, have you got any other suggestions or advice for him right now as a concerned parent witnessing this cycle of domestic violence in his daughter's home and family?
Yeah, Andrew, I think, forever's a long time to regret not having a conversation with somebody that's a difficult conversation, and it sounds like you've really tried to have those conversations. And I think because it sounds like your daughter is in that cycle, there'll be times in that cycle where she's open to listening, and there'll be times where she's not. So we just have to work with that and make sure that when she's in that, she knows that you're safe, and she knows that you've made offers of help, and she knows that you're right there in her corner when she needs you, and really that's about all you can do, and it's so important.
I tend to agree with you, Matt, that there have been many times when she's been very open about it, and I've been able to sort of be empathetic towards the whole scenario. And this book, I certainly will try to procure it somehow. Is it available on your website, or is it just a general sort of store, book?
Robin Parry, the author, passed away a couple of years ago, and since then we are the only place where that book's available.
So read your website again, please, Matt.
Yeah, so that's circuitbreakercourse.net. Or else you can just search Circuit Breaker Course and you'll find it straight away. Circuit
Breaker Course. Andrew, I want to thank you so much for being vulnerable with us today and making a call. We have a couple other callers waiting as well. But Andrew, thank you so much, and hoping and praying that your family finds a solution.
Thank you again, both of you.
Okay, God bless.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, we've got another caller who's been very patient. Brent in Mornington, Victoria. Brent, I want to thank you for being so patient. And have you got a comment or a question for Matt today?
I have, yeah. I just want to mention I'm actually from Merrigan, not Mornington, in northern Victoria.
Sorry about that, Brent.
Merrigan, that's all right. That's no worries at all. But, Matt, I'd like to thank you very much for your testimony that you shared before the news, and I was blessed by your honesty.
My pleasure.
We're all tempted by the devil, and we have to pray that we may not enter into temptation. Peter, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he slept, and when he should have prayed, and he lost it, and cut off the servant of the high priest.
Yeah, he did.
He did. So we should pray that we shouldn't enter into temptation, if we can come to that place of prayer. Regarding domestic violence, I'd just like to mention that I'd say the cause of domestic violence would be one, not denying himself and taking up his cross and following Jesus. What do you say, Matt? Thanks.
Yeah, I think as someone with a lived experience as a Christian, I just want to say that I think one of the mistakes that I made, and a mistake that a lot of Christians make, is to try to work it out on their own, because it's a really shameful issue, and we don't want to ever talk about these sorts of things, or that we might be doing these kinds of appalling things with our partner. And so it's kind of like a little secret that we have just with the Lord, and no one else gets in. And I think that some of these issues are not healed in a vacuum. They're only healed in community, and safe and dignified community. And so I think that it's really important that we have people around us that can be part of that change, because as it says in the Word, faith without works is dead, and sometimes there's some works that we have to put with our faith to be able to outwork change. And I found that all the prayer in the world, I guess, God answered those prayers by giving me the practical tools and pointing me in the direction of that sort of community. So prayer's certainly never wasted, but I think that, prayer sometimes isn't the only thing, and sometimes we have to look at the whole of Scripture and things like confession and the power of confessing something like that to a brother and having them still love and accept you and say, hey, I'm going to be in your corner, I'm going to help you and support you in the change that you're looking for.
I think you make a really important point there, Matt, because, I've been a Christian leader for many years now, and I love what Paul said. We know in part and we prophesy in part. As much as we'd like to imagine that our prayers are perfect and we have this incredible connection to God, and every time we pray, the earth splits in half and lightning bolts come down from it. The reality is it's not like that, is it?
No.
And as much as we pray on our own, like you said, especially when we're struggling with something, we need the prayers of a brother, don't we? That's why the Bible says, go to the elders of the church, agree on earth. Two of you agreeing on earth. Like, we can't do this on our own, can we?
I don't think so. I don't think we're meant to. And I think if we could, that'd be very sad. We miss something. We miss out on something. Because for me, the cross is about guilt. It wipes away our guilt in a moment of confession to God. But shame is only activated by that command of Scripture, confess your sins to one another and pray for each other. And that's where we can undress shame. Yeah, which is a lot more crippling, I think.
Yeah. And have you got a question to ask Matt about domestic or family violence today?
No, not just now, thanks.
Well, Brent, I want to really thank you for having the courage to ring us, and we love our Victorian listeners, so I want to thank you for joining us on 2020 today. God bless you, Brent.
Bless you too.
Okay, we've got another caller waiting here, and it is Kiera from Brisbane in Queensland. Are you there, Kiera?
Can I get the phone away? Hello. This is Kira.
How are you today, Kira?
I'm good, thanks. Now, I met Matt about 12 years ago because I've been in a DV situation for many years, and I'm a friend of Hazel Evers, so he may remember me or not, I'm not sure. But
yes.
Yeah, so still living in South Brisbane, but 3 weeks ago I did leave my husband, and we've been together for 17 years. But I guess the message that I wanted to send is that the reason that I stayed for so long is for our son. And having left now that situation, because there was a lot of emotional and verbal abuse, but having left now, I can't really say like there is improvement with my situation yet. But I've been fortunate in terms of not having like post-DV things. But the reason that it's so difficult is because I've had to leave my son with my husband. And so that I guess what I wanted to say, Matt, is that I'm now I've been working with Kamara, which is an Indigenous organisation. So we have a lot of families who do have DV. So if there's any listeners out there who are experiencing DV, they can actually ring Family and Child Connect or ring Kamara, because we have a intensive family support service. So we do work with women in DV, and there is a lot of help and supports out there. And I think I've been one of the fortunate people who do have really good connections out there. And I'm thankful for people like Hazel Evers and others like yourself, obviously, who do have a lot of knowledge and strengths in that area of being able to help others. But I think for my husband, I guess my prayer is that he would come to a place where he realises that he needs to get help. Yeah. And I think, the world's way mostly is that, well, you are in a DV relationship, leave that person and move on. But for me, I believe that there should be more things for men to be able to get help, so that more resources out there for men, so that relationships can be repaired.
Yeah, well, let's stop there, Kira. I'd like to ask Matt to respond to that. Matt, what would you like to say in response?
Good to hear your voice again, Kira. And I'm a big fan of Kamara. They ran our circuit breaker program a couple of years ago before COVID. I'm a big fan of their work. I think what you're saying's really important, and especially I don't want to diminish what you've just shared about having to leave and how very, very difficult that is. It's not the It's not what anybody goes down the aisle expecting, and we all hope that our marriage is going to be beautiful and it's going to work and be God honouring. But I'm glad you have been able to leave a dangerous relationship, and I do hope things work out. I know that for me, the reality of a scripture, and this scripture really guides me in working with people in a situation like yours, and that is Proverbs 19:19. I don't know about you, I was born in 19-something, and so it's easy to remember Proverbs 19:19, and it says that an abusive man must suffer the consequences of his actions. If you rescue him, you will have to do it again. And I think in some relationships, rescuing looks like staying around and putting up with something that's not sustainable, and it looks like being silent about it, not letting anybody else know, because I think the natural consequences of treating somebody that way is people do find out and people do challenge you and get involved. And so, my hope for you is that you've maybe done the kindest thing of all that you can to help him to, if change is going to come, we don't know, but I've just seen that if it is ever going to come, often it comes on the back of consequences, as it did for me.
Well, Matt, can I ask you, because Kara's earlier comment was what support and resources are available to men. Have you got any advice? I suppose Kara's not really talking to her husband, but for a man that needs help or wants help, where do they turn? What do they do?
Well, there are plenty of good programs out there. There's a few bad ones as well, but that's what we really endeavour to do in the Circuit Breaker program is to provide a safe and dignified group experience where men or women can find the tools that they need to and strategies that they need to change. And so we only work with people that are voluntary, that really want to change. But there are other programs out there through Anglicare and through Relationships Australia and Salvation Army and other programs where they'll work with people that are mandated. But there's a lot of people that want to change, and we just got to stop making that hard for them as a community and provide a dignified way they can do that. So that's what we do.
Very, very true.
We're getting around Australia. We're in 5 states now, so there's groups coming up on our website. But,
great. So that's the Circuit Breaker program for all of our listeners, and there is a website for that. But Kara, there is another caller waiting, and I want to just thank you so much for calling in and having the courage to share a little bit of your story with us today on 2020.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate that time. All right. Well, have a great rest of the day, and God bless
God bless
everyone.
you, Kara.
You too, Kara.
Okay,
God bless.
Bye, Matt. And, bye.
Well, we have another caller waiting very patiently, and it's Alex, also from Victoria in Melbourne. Alex, welcome.
Thank you, Andrew and Matt. I just like to say that we need to pray and put our prayers into action, especially in these hard times and those difficult situations. And just to remember that God teaches us to love God in the first instance and our neighbour as ourselves. And Apostle Paul also expands on that. He says not to look on your own things only, but to look on things of others. And when we start to think about how we can help each other rather than just what we tend to work things out together then rather than individually. So it's a case of learning to that. In that way, we learn to give rather than to take, and that can help. God help us.
I love what Galatians says about bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ, which of course is what you're saying, to love our neighbour and it's in that bearing the burden together, isn't it? It's about being that brother that gets beside and says, hey, even though you're doing some really appalling things, I'm going to support you to get change, and we're going to do this together.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Can I ask, Alex, have you been personally touched or impacted by family or domestic violence?
No, not really. Growing up, my dad was not Christian, and he liked to have a beer, and that ended up in being a bit of a hard time. But apart from that, Mum was a Christian, so it was difficult, very difficult for Mum. But so that's the way it was in our place.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I'm thankful to God for that you haven't been personally impacted by it. But Matt, you want to have any closing thoughts for Alex today?
Yeah, I just think what you're saying is really important, Alex, and it really underscores for me the value of a friend. It's, some of these stories, the pivotal person is not the counsellor, it's not the pastor, it's not the expert. Sometimes a really important person in this story is the best friend, and the fact that there's someone safe to talk to and there's someone safe to walk with, and so I absolutely agree with you, Alex.
Yeah.
Excellent, Alex. Well, we really want to thank you for calling in via Melbourne today in Victoria. Out of interest, do you listen to us via the app or are you listening via digital radio in Melbourne?
I listen to a radio with still got valves in it.
Oh, wow.
A good old-fashioned one. Well, Alex, we love our Victorian listeners, and as you probably know, there is a digital signal in Melbourne now. Anyone you know in Melbourne that's got a digital radio, please share the love with them. Let them know they can listen to Vision Radio now in Melbourne via digital radio as you can in Sydney and Brisbane. But once again, Alex, thank you for your call today on 2020.
Thank you.
Matt, I want to, if we can, before more callers come through, I want us to talk about one state in particular which has recently passed some legislation, and that's Queensland, about coercive control, because that is a form of family and domestic violence too, isn't it? So it's non-physical, but it's coercive control. Talk to me about this legislation.
Yeah, well, once again, it's an effort to legislate out a problem, which I don't think we can do. My understanding of the laws now, New South Wales and Queensland have both passed these and haven't yet implemented them. I don't see a whole lot new in them that's not already covered, for instance, in Queensland by the 2012 Domestic Violence Protection Act. As far as behaviours that are mentioned, it's more about the pattern of, and being able to establish a pattern, being able to establish intent is something that I think a lot of lawyers are a little concerned about at the moment. But as I said before, really in the heat of the moment, laws don't really have any value. Like they're not very powerful to somebody that's that lost and out of control.
Well, even a restraining order or an AVO, like you said, there's been unfortunately murders committed by people who have restraining orders and AVOs on them. It doesn't stop them, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I think that there's an amazing opportunity here for churches because governments are not going to fix this problem. Goodness, we should be able to look at the scoreboard and know that by now. But for churches, I think I would like to say that they shouldn't feel squeezed out of this sector. They shouldn't feel unwelcome because they have so much to give and the cavalry are not coming. But what we have some superpowers that certainly I see in the community as well. But we are the ones who believe in redemption. We believe these people can change, and I don't hear that much out there in the domestic violence sector. We're the ones who can love the sinner and hate the sin. And I want to suggest if you can't love these people and get close to them, if you can't love unlovely people, it's going to be really hard to change them. And also we have strong and supportive community around that we can wrap around those people for what is a really difficult change to implement in their lives. So I actually think, this is controversial, but I actually think churches and Christians are the best positioned to act in the space of prevention. And by prevention, I've got an old-fashioned idea about prevention. I just believe it should be preventing something. How about you?
Yep.
And so I'm talking about right back from the edge of the cliff, not the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. I'm talking about a preventative army at the top of that cliff. And that's very much what we're trying to build through, what we're trying to do through Circuit Breaker program to put those tools in the hands of churches to be able to support and lead those people to change.
Yeah, that's a controversial statement. I wonder if the current government in Queensland would agree with you there. But you believe that the church should be at the forefront of providing answers to this area of family and domestic violence. That is a big call, Matt.
Well, unless we get close to unlovely people, they're the only ones. At the end of the day, they're the only ones that can empower change here. Police can't do it. Laws can't do it. Governments can't do it. The only ones who can change it are the ones doing the violence. And many of them are seeking help, just like I was. Many of them hate themselves for what they're doing. And if we are able to engage them a lot more intelligently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got the most amazing story that you were a perpetrator 20 years ago. You did a course, you submitted yourself, you humbled yourself, and here we are today, 20 years later, and you haven't repeated. The pattern or the cycle's been broken. That's so powerful. And, when you're talking, I'm just thinking about Caesar Augustus, one of the Roman Caesars in the first century AD. He tried to change society by legislating change, and he initiated all these laws, and nothing changed. And when he died, he put a comedian's mask on his face and just said, it's all a big joke. And he said, the gods are laughing at us because I thought I could change the world by legislating change. And he said, no one changed. Now, he needed Jesus and he needed the gospel because, like you said, only the church has the answer, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and just the ability to love people. I think other people in community can do that, but we're certainly better positioned to do that naturally, I think.
Well, this is Matt Boulton who's with us today. I just want to remind our listeners, if you have been or are in a situation today that is affected by family or domestic violence, there's many places you can turn. You can call Lifeline on 131114. You can call Beyond Blue. If you're in an emergency situation, obviously you can call 000. If you just want to pray with someone and you need help just to get some prayer, call Vision Prayer. We have a prayer line here at Vision, Monday to Friday, 1-800-772-936. And there's one more thing I want to cover with you today, Matt, and there is an event coming up in Wollongong in New South Wales. Can you quickly tell us about that event?
Yeah, Andrew, I'm going to be in Wollongong this weekend, so I'm going to be doing a training day that I call Tools for Preventing Domestic Violence. So that's a training day. It also is to train people to deliver our program. And on the Monday night in Wollongong, I'll be doing a Keeping Your Cool community seminar, so completely free. And it's a chance for people to get a bit of a taste and see of what might be in the Circuit Breaker program. I'll also be telling my story, so if you've got someone that you think needs to hear that, get them along there. We're also coming to Ipswich.
So hang on, no, let's stop in Wollongong. So when is the Wollongong event?
Okay, so Wollongong is the training day is Saturday. So just anybody that's in a role.
Which Saturday are we talking about?
That's Saturday the 23rd. This coming Saturday.
So it's the Saturday this week.
Yeah.
Okay, so today's Thursday. So in 2 days' time in Wollongong, you're doing a training day. What time does it kick off and where is it? That's
9:00, and you can find all the details for the location and everything on our website on our events page.
Yep.
So
which is
circuitbreakercourse.net.
circuitbreakercourse.net. So if you want to find out about this Wollongong event on Saturday, now it sounds like you're there till Monday as well. So Monday night you're doing something in the same area. It's on the circuitbreaker.net website, correct?
Circuit Breaker Course.
Circuitbreakercourse.net.
If you search Circuit Breaker Course, you'll find us pretty quickly. And there's also details on there about what we're doing in Ipswich and Carindale. We've got some more Keeping Your Cool events coming up there.
And they're coming up in March as well, or April. When are they going to happen?
They're coming up in April, those two.
Excellent. So it sounds like it's a good idea to go to circuitbreakercourse.net, find out more. Matt, I can just tell by listening to you, you've got such a heart for people and such a heart to help people in this space. And I want to thank you for your love and your compassion for people in this space, and also having the courage to do what you do and tell your story. And I hope and pray that your story has inspired many people today, that there is hope out there, that this is not just a dark hole that once someone's in there, there's no coming out. And this gives hope to individuals, it gives hope to families. And so, Matt, I want to really thank you for joining us today on 2020. And just remind everybody that his website is circuitbreakercourse.net. But Matt Boulton, I want to thank you for joining us on 2020 today.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. God bless.